Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to be showing you what types of vehicles and how many of them can fit into the vehicle bay of the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie is a military grade dropship that's designed to be able to carry a large amount of soldiers at one time as well as a vehicle up to the size of an Ursa rover. And this is the amount of space that you'll have to work with when it comes to the Valkyrie. And when you see it empty like this, it's easy to greatly overestimate what kinds of things that you'll be able to get within it. I generally tend to limit the number of vehicles that I'm trying to transport down to what I consider to be a comfortable fit. And I've developed a very specific definition as to what I consider a comfortable fit to be. First, both the driver and the passenger of a parked vehicle should be able to get out of it and be able to either enter into the ship that's transporting it or be able to exit out through the ramp that the vehicle used to enter from. All stowed vehicles should be able to fully fit within the confines of the ship's vehicle grid, with no tires or dangly bits hanging over the side. And they should be spaced far enough apart so that they're not going to accidentally collide with the other vehicles or the walls of the ship during transit. And finally, you should be able to easily get the vehicle in and out of the ship without damaging it or the ship that's transporting it. That's really it, so with that in mind, let's get to it. I think that the Dragonflies are as good a place to start as any. If you have the barricade extended out, then the most that you're going to be able to park into the back of the Valkyrie is 2 Dragonflies. Extending out the barricade is the most practical way to stow vehicles. It keeps people from parking anywhere they want, and it ensures that no one is going to block the entrance to where the drop seats are located, the habitation area, where the ventral turret is, or where either of the side doors are. Plus, it helps to keep spazzes from accidentally running you over. So keeping the barricade extended is a smart thing to do if you have a lot of people on board who are using the vehicle bay at the same time. My recommendation for how many Dragonflies you could carry is 3. This isn't the max limit for how many it can hold, this is just my recommendation for how many I'd limit myself to carrying at one time. You can do this by dropping the barricade and pulling the 2 Dragonflies up a little bit, just to the point so that their nacelles are right up to, but not under the overhang. After you do that, you can get one more gravlev in if you park it perpendicular to the other 2. They'll all be firmly set in the vehicle grid, and a driver and passenger will be able to easily get to each of them. But what's the fun in that, really? After all, 3 Dragonflies is the limit that the Cutlass Black can hold, and the Valkyrie is a lot more expensive and it's a lot bigger than the Cutlass is. So I think we can do better than that. Now, here's where I'm going to start pushing things. You can get a lot more Dragonflies into the vehicle bay if you're willing to take a chance, and it starts with not being afraid to park a line of 3 Dragonflies up against the far wall and under the overhang. It's going to make things a lot more inconvenient to get around because you're going to have to jump over a bunch of nacelles every time you want to get to the drop seats, the rear turret, or to exit the ship through either of the 2 sliding doors. But the biggest problem is going to be the overhang. The trouble is that gravlevs have a tendency to magnetize themselves to any low-hanging bits of collision. If this happens, they'll flip 180 and stick to the ceiling of the overhang. It's not 100% reproducible, but happens often enough to be a problem. If you can pull this off, then you'll be able to double the amount of Dragonflies that you can carry. At first I tried getting 5 in by parking them like you see here, but then I tried it again, but this time I parked them so that they're all facing in the same direction, and I could get a total of 6 in this time. I've generally found that I can fit 2 Noxes into any amount of space that fits 1 Dragonfly, and this rule still seems to be the case when it comes to the Valkyrie. Now mind you, this relates to how many Dragonflies I can comfortably fit into it, and that number was 3. I found that I can stack 3 Noxes in a row with 2 rows of them for a total of 6 Noxes, which still kills me because that's the total number of Noxes I could safely stow inside of a Cutlass Black. I spaced out the Noxes just enough so I could get onto each one of them from either side and off again without any issues. And as you can see in some of these shots, the Noxes tend to kick and move about even when they're idle. So if they're anywhere near one another when they start to kick, it'll set off a domino effect resulting in some serious chaos. This is a good thing to keep in mind when you're trying to transport a bunch of Noxes around. If you want to stay within the boundaries of what I consider to be a comfortable fit, then you're only really going to be able to get a total of 2 Cyclones into the Valkyrie. And mind you, if you limit yourself to carrying 2 Cyclones, you'll be able to get into both vehicles from either the driver or the passenger side and into the back of it, which is going to be really handy if you're transporting a TR or a standard Cyclone. You're also going to have enough room to fully walk around the 2 of them and to be able to get to anywhere within inside the rover bay. I've upped this number to 4, but it really steps over the line when it comes to what my definition of a comfortable fit is. It's going to be difficult to get out of a vehicle, but if you plan it correctly, you can park the first pair of them one in front of the other, then have the drivers get out and park the other 2 right next to it. No matter how you strategize at doing this, the passengers are going to have to exit the Cyclones before they're driven into the vehicle bay. They're going to be fine if you transport them like this, but you're going to have to put some serious thought into the driver and passenger arrangement situation before you attempt to stow each one of the vehicles. You could take this one step further and get 6 Cyclones into the vehicle bay, but in order to pull this off, you're going to have to drive the first row of them all the way up till they're touching the far wall of the vehicle bay. You're not going to be able to fit as much as a sliver of paper in between them, and the driver and passenger are going to have to stay in the vehicle while you travel out to your destination, but it is possible to do. I wouldn't recommend this as a typical method for transporting Cyclones, but if you found yourself in the middle of a war where you're trying to get as many ground forces to a battlefront as possible in the shortest amount of time, this could give you a huge advantage by allowing you to drop off 6 ground vehicles per trip that consisted of AAs and TRs and be able to deliver 10 soldiers on top of that. This is one of my favorites. One Merlin or Archimedes can be brought into the rover bay and with relative ease. It's a good fit, and up until the Carrot came out, my ability to carry a Kruger around was severely limited. So I'm happy to have another option when it comes to transporting this little snubcraft around. And in case you were wondering why, I use this ship a lot for taking aerial camera shots. It's small and agile, so you can use it to get into areas that a lot of other ships can't get into, and it can land nearly anywhere. The Razor just fits inside of it. I'm going to leave it up to you if you want to try your luck and use the Valkyrie to transport it. It barely clears the opening of the rover bay, and I'm sure that some people are going to have more trouble than others at getting it in. And of course, some people are going to have no trouble at all. The first 2 times that I tried, I ended up shearing off one of its tail fins, and on the 3rd attempt, it went in like butter. I think that the real issue is that if you ever tried to land the Razor during a panic situation, then you'd be more likely to inflict some real damage on it before you got it inside. But if you're just casually transporting it from one place to another, then you can afford to take all the time that you need to load it up. There's not a lot of leeway when it comes to the Ursa rover. It's been known for a while now that you can get one of them inside of a Valkyrie, and there's not a great deal of wiggle room when it comes to that. The Ursa almost entirely fills up all the space in the rover bay, leaving just enough room for someone to walk around it on either side and be able to get into the back. But unlike with the Freelancer Max, the Valkyrie's vehicle bay has enough clearance for you to be able to pull the rover in without having to first lower its turrets. Seeing how many Greycats I could fit inside of the Valkyrie was something that I just had to try for science. And at first I whinged so much at doing this, but it actually ended up being a lot of fun. It's one of the most enjoyable vehicles to try and cram into a ship, mainly because it's the only type that you can park wheel to wheel without any problems. The wheels are so small that you can jump right over them, and you can get out of either side of the Greycat even if they're parked this closely together. So after everything was said and done, I ended up being able to get a total of 12 Greycats in. And because of the shape of the area you have to work with, you're better off spacing them out as much as you can because having a little breathing room between them never hurts. This brings up images of having a full strike force of soldiers rolling out of the Valkyrie, each one of them riding their own personal futuristic golf cart into battle. It would be glorious. I get a lot of comments on these types of videos asking if other vehicles that I didn't mention could fit inside of a certain vessel or not. So just to be clear, the only ships that can land inside of it are the Krugers or a Razor. So the Pisces, the M50, and the 85X won't be able to fit. And up until now, I purposely didn't mention any of the vehicles that aren't in game yet, like the X1, the Velocity, and the Force, or any of the Rangers. But I intend on revisiting them once they are in game, and would most likely dedicate an entire episode to each of them and go over what they can and can't fit into. Well, that's going to be it for my list of what you can get inside of the Valkyrie. I'd like to thank everybody for their support by liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel to grow and it increases my visibility on YouTube. I'd also like to thank my patrons who make it possible for me to continue to make videos. If you'd like to help support the channel, you'll find a link to my Patreon site in the description of this video. I'm your host, Law of the West. Thanks for watching, and take care.